Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York. So, you know those slapstick comedies where the thief shoves an item under his shirt and it's so obvious and so conspicuous that the scene isn't really about a robbery. It's really just to illustrate how stupid the thief is and how obvious the thieving part of the plot is? Well, that's about where we are with Donald Trump's attempt to get Republicans in Congress to steal from the American people to fund Donald Trump's gold-gilded ballroom. Tucked inside a $72 billion with the B dollar package filled with other politically toxic items, like $38 billion for ICE. ICE, of course, the agency viewed favorably by just 30% of the American people, and containing none of the reform measures that Democrats have demanded after the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. So tucked inside of that is a $1 billion lump sum for Donald Trump's ballroom. It is listed under, quote, security adjustments and upgrades. The Republican chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, says in a statement that the funds are for security only and they cannot be spent on, quote, non-security elements. But that $1 billion still goes towards something that the American people never asked for and don't want. And spending $1 billion of taxpayer money, of your money, on anything related to Donald Trump's gold ballroom would be a complete flip-flop, a 180-degree reversal from what Donald Trump promised.
The ballroom for the White House is the thing that you people have really, really been very generous with. These are all private individuals that put up a lot of money to build the ballroom. Not one penny is being used from the federal government. We're giving them, myself and donors are giving them free of charge for nothing. So we did this no charge to the taxpayer whatsoever. We have no taxpayer putting up 10 cents. I'm giving with donors $400 million to build a ballroom. And there's the knockout panel right here.
So not 10 cents, not a dollar, just $1 billion. A poll released last week shows that just 25% of all Americans support the White House ballroom at all. But when that poll asked who should pay for Donald Trump's gold ballroom, 9% of the respondents said that the money should be appropriated by Congress. Ask voters, and they will tell you that in a time of great economic distress, a gold ballroom is the last thing that the President of the United States of America should be spending his time on. Here's what some Florida residents told our colleague Alex Tabbitt last week.
Meanwhile, we're hearing President Trump insist that he needs a ballroom connected to the White House. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, I think it's probably money that could be used elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? With the way the economy is, and people are starving. You know. Medication.
There's a lot of things we need to work on before we're doing a ballroom reconstruction, so I think it's a little ridiculous to me.
I think he's selfish. I think he wants something to be in his name, but I think, like she said, there's so much going on right now. I think that's the last thing that we should be worrying about.
He shouldn't be doing that. He should be focusing on lowering these prices that he jacked up, because it wasn't this high before he became president. Man, gas was $3-something. Barely $3. Now it's $4. You know, it's. He don't need to be talking about ballrooms, man. You need to be trying to fix the economy.
So, how disconnected are they? Well, as Republicans plot to stick taxpayers with a $1 billion bill for the gold ballroom, Americans are right now, week after week, feeling more and more squeezed at the gas pump because of Donald Trump's war with Iran. Prices at the pump continue to soar, inflicting pain on Americans in every corner of our country. The average price for a gallon of gas is now $4.48, according to AAA. That $4.48 is up 30 cents from last week. Donald Trump stiffing the American taxpayer amid widespread anger and fury over his failure to address their economic concerns is where we begin today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Managing editor of The Bulwark and contributor Sam Stein is here. Also joining us, former Battleground States Director for the Harris Walz campaign and Democratic strategist Dan Kennenan is back. And with me at the table, Democratic strategist and Columbia University professor, political analyst Basil Smikle is here. Sam, how did this $1 billion end up in the bill in the first place?
Well, so there is a reconciliation bill that congressional Republicans are pushing now. And for people who don't want to get too in the weeds, a reconciliation bill is a budgetary matter that can pass just with a party line vote. So you can stuff any budgetary matter into it and you can pass it with 50 Republicans in the Senate. So it becomes a grab bag. Last night, the Senate Judiciary Republicans put forth their portion of that bill. And it included tens of billions of dollars for ICE, for Customs and Border Patrol. And then tucked in there was this $1 billion expenditure. It was put in a bunch of legalese terms, but basically it's for security for the ballroom. And to your point, this was never as advertised. It wasn't that Donald Trump went up there and said, hey, we're going to have this ballroom. It's going to be paid for. And oh, by the way, the security components of the ballroom, that you're going to have to cover from taxpayer funds. He never said that. He said it was going to be fully paid for by private donations or money from his own pocket. It started at $200 million, went to $300 million, went to $400 million. At one point, Lindsey Graham, you might recall, introduced legislation that would have had Congress appropriate funds for about $400 million. Now it's $1 billion on top of whatever it costs to construct the ballroom itself. That will be paid for by taxpayer funds. I will just add one quick note. Part of the reconciliation process allows members of the opposing party to call votes to strip out various components of the bill. And so Democrats will have the opportunity to say, hey, we're going to have an up and down vote on this $1 billion specifically. And that will put every Republican on the record as voting for or against funding the ballroom at a price tag of $1 billion.
Who's running the White House in terms of guarding against barreling 100 miles an hour toward that for which 9% of the public supports, Sam?
That's a great question. And I was talking about this with some colleagues. I think what's happening here, and I have no insight reporting on it, but I think what's happening here is that Donald Trump, especially in the second term, is not getting any conflicting information into his ecosystem. He's surrounded by people in the cabinet who are largely sycophantic. You see it all the time when they have these cabinet meetings and they praise him as if he's the second coming. He probably watches only news media that affirms his priors. And when he does, he'll lash out on Truth Social. So you see it every now and then when he posts something going after a random cable commentator. But by and large, I think he just gets people who tell him how great he is. And then that kind of supplements into him pursuing policies that are really vanity projects. So the ballroom is the biggest personification of this, right? $1 billion. He thinks, whatever, it's great. We'll have events here. We don't have to do the White House Correspondents' Dinner at the Washington Hilton. But it's also the reflecting pool and the golf courses at East Potomac in this arch. And it raises the question, why is he doing all of this, right? Is it vanity? Probably a lot of it is. But what is the point of building all this type of stuff if you're just going to end up leaving Washington, D.C.? Is it a legacy matter, or is it something larger than that we're not really accurately describing?
I mean, I guess what I would push back and say, Dan, is that every time the press tries to figure out what sophisticated secret version of 3D chess Trump is playing, he's just doing some dumb shit on his phone. So I want to guard against the opaque mystery. It is likely, I mean, we see from the way he tweets that he reaches for his phone and posts all night. If any of our children did that, they'd lose their phone for a semester or 7. I want to ask you, though, your theory about the people around Donald Trump. I mean, I went back and looked at the New York Times. He first talked about indicting Jim Comey in 2017, and based on the New York Times reporting, Don McGahn stopped it. He wanted to indict Comey while Sessions was Attorney General. He still wanted to indict him when Bill Barr took over. There was an intermediate guy. He wanted to indict him while he was there. He wanted to indict him while Pam Bondi was there. The variable in terms of the bad, unpopular behavior that the American people don't support isn't actually Donald Trump. A lot of this is the same stuff he wanted to do the whole time. It's the weakness and the fecklessness of the people around him. And I wonder what you think that says about Susie Wiles and Todd Blanche.
Well, I wish I could say it was a surprise, Nicole, but you may recall, the campaign in 2024, we talked about this all the time, that in 2016 to 2020, there were some serious people around Donald Trump, General Kelly and others, who could curtail his worst impulses. And they were all excommunicated one by one, largely through the events of January 6th and beyond. And you're left with kind of the My Pillow guy caucus around him. And I think that Susie Wiles is someone who's just trying to keep the trains running on time in the building, as difficult as that looks like it is for her. I was told by some Republican sources, from other appearances on networks where there are some former Trump folks that go on a lot, that, the deal with her was basically let Trump be Trump and not try to get in the way of his decision making. And on the messaging, I'll just say, the 3D chess piece of this, sometimes people want to say he's a great messenger or the worst messenger. I just think he's a prolific messenger. He says things that can cut through, and sometimes to his benefit. Build the wall was the way to describe that he'd be tough on immigration. No tax on tips was a way to describe very easily that he could connect with working class Americans on costs. And unfortunately for him, I think build the ballroom is the way to describe how selfish he is and how unfocused he is on your core economic needs at a time of incredible economic uncertainty. And the entire landscape of tariffs and the war and the gas prices and the ACA cost spikes are all his to own, and that will make the atmosphere. But this singular issue, which is so easy to understand, will be the thing that drives that straight to swing voters' mindsets and hopefully to the polls in the fall.